G'day folks, today we're going to show you how to prepare concrete floor ready for tiling. The equipment we're going to use today for our job, we're going to use a single head grinder. So this machine we're actually going to use for the bulk of the area of preparing the surface. As you can see, we've got about 50 square metres today, so this piece of equipment is going to do the bulk of the work. For some of the edges and the smaller, tighter corners, we're going to use the smaller grinder edger. You can see here we've also got a vacuum. This vacuum attaches to both of these machines. It's going to keep the dust down and keep the work area a whole lot cleaner. Because we've got a couple of tricky bits and pieces, we need to work around some other infrastructure in the area. We've got a small hand grinder and it's actually got its own separate vacuum unit as well. As I mentioned, we're working to about 50 square metres. If you're working on, say, a smaller bathroom or a laundry, you could actually just use the smaller grinder edger and the small hand grinder, and it'll be job done. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of grinding and preparing our area, you need to make sure that you're ready for the final step, being that whether you're going to paint it, seal it, or tile it. In our case, we're going to tile it. So before you start, you certainly need to measure the area, work out how many square metres you need for the final step. So measuring for your job, it's a pretty simple task, especially with this particular scenario. We're in a pretty plain rectangle, so it's a simple case of measuring length versus width. Obviously, if you're having to work around other furniture or other brick walls or other elements, you need to essentially break your area down into smaller rectangles, add that final area to get your final size. So once you have your final size measurement, talk with your supplier of where you're going to get your tiles or your final sealant and things like that. They can recommend the best material, the best finish for your particular job. A handy tip when working out the size and how many tiles you're going to need, always allow for at least 10% extra. That allows for any sort of the odd broken tile in the box, any mishaps when it comes to cutting tiles, but also it'll leave you with a couple of spare tiles for any accidents or incidents further down the track. So in most cases, in preparing for tiling, you're going to have to grind the top of the concrete off. You can see in our scenario here, we've got to take off this top layer of old paint. You can see already it's starting to flake up, so we can't just tile over the top because the tiles are just going to lift straight off with that paint. Another challenge we've got for this particular scenario, we've actually got a bit of a high spot where these two old concrete slabs meet. You can see here, even with our high-tech straight edge here, there's quite a bit of difference. We're going to take this the height, the top edge of this slab down, and as we go down, we're going to spread it out to at least 1 metre across, so we get a nice level surface over the whole area. So we've just used the smaller single head edger machine to take off the main high spots between where these two slabs join. We're actually switching it up to the bigger single head grinder, and that's just to help spread the load and help even out that join, so we've got a nice big flat area again. So we've just finished taking care of our main high spot problem. You can see we've done a couple of laps up and down through this main seam. Next step, we're actually going to work over the main area. We're using the big single head grinder. We're going to use long parallel passes for the first lap. Once we go over the whole area, we'll go back and do a second run over the whole area, running perpendicular across the main area. Once we get that done, it's going to switch to the smaller grinder edger, and that's going to let us take care of these edges right up against the wall here. So quick note on the safety gear. Obviously, we're working with concrete, heavy machinery, so suitable footwear, obviously. Eye protection, there's lots of dust flying around. Ear protection, some of these machines are quite noisy, especially working with the vacuum, but probably most important, working with concrete dust, is a dust mask. So here's a good indication about why vacuuming between passes is so important. You can see this area here where we haven't vacuumed yet, and here where we have. So you get great visibility of the areas that you might need to concentrate on a little bit more when you do your second perpendicular passes. So with your project, fingers crossed you've got a nice big open area. But as you can see with our particular project here, we've got this wall-mounted cabinet in the way, and as you can imagine, the bigger machines aren't going to be able to get in underneath. So we've got this handheld grinder another matching vacuum cleaner to help control all the dust. And so we'll be able to get all the way up to the walls under this cabinet. So one thing to keep in mind using this concrete hand grinder is that you have to keep the disc level to the ground. So obviously you're going to be on your hands and knees. You've got to be very conscious of the fact, because you don't want to tilt it up any one particular way, and you'll be digging in and cutting gouges into the concrete. So with the main area done, with the big single head grinder, and we've also done some of the tight little tricky parts with the hand grinder, we're now about to do the edges along the wall here. So we've got the small single grinder with the edger shroud on it. You can see the shroud here. It moves to run along the edge, and as you can see, nice flat straight edge. That'll go hard up against the wall. This machine, you can see that the wheels actually angle, so that'll allow the operator to actually offset the machine as you run along that straight edge. Just remember, when using the equipment, Kennards Hire recommends the use of safety products at all times. Be sure to use the personal protective clothing and equipment for each product hired, which are available at every brand.
Kennards make your job easy.